Hello. This review was supposed to be done like at Christmas, but my laziness and a couple other setbacks have it coming out in July. This is, according to IMDb, the 1303rd best movie with Christmas as a keyword. It is the Australian dark comedy Mushrooms, which was inspired by Arsenic and Old Lace, a play and later a Cary Grant movie where a man, right before his honeymoon, decides to go visit his aunts and finds out that they are serial killers.
The gentleman died because he drank some wine with poison in it.
Well, how did the poison get in the wine?
Well, we put it in wine because it's less noticeable. When it's in tea, it has a distinct odor.
It is a comedy largely about Cary Grant being worried that he's going to be mentally ill like his brother and his killer aunts. So he doesn't know if he wants to subject his new wife to possible mental illness of his in the future. This movie keeps the crazy aunts and makes them widows, and I'm gonna let my good friend TYTD Reviews tell you the rest of this plot. That's right, collab video! Oh, and by the way, he did not do this under duress of any kind. It was totally his idea. I swear.
You want to know what happens in Mushrooms? You're talking to me like I can just breeze through this thing, Raymond, in a couple of minutes. This film dazed and confused me, and you want me to try and give you a nice, tidy summary. Well, I needed an excuse to keep day drinking, so why the hell not? Okay, so Mushrooms is the story of Minnie and Flo, two widowed spinsters living in a slowly collapsing pawn shop in suburban Australia. Originally, the pair's husbands ran the shop, and apparently they did rather well. They did steal a fair bit of the stuff they sold, mind, but hey, what even is stealing these days if not just taking from someone who took from the earth? Right, eco-warriors? Anyway, this sticky-fingered trait seems to have rubbed off on Flo, who, when we meet her in this film, has just come back from the local supermarket having stolen a metric crap ton of frozen food. Why frozen? Well, I have to assume it'll keep longer than unfrozen perishables, and it leads to a gag where the food defrosts and it looks like Flo's pissing herself. How moving. You're as witty as Oscar Wilde.
That's disgusting.
Anyway, before Flo can make it home, she happens to bump into a very wanted criminal called Ralph, who goes by the nickname Grub. He spotted a sign in the front of the pawn shop put there by Minnie inquiring for lodgers to stay with them.
Multiple times during our conversations, I said, "Hey, I have a brother named Ralph. Please call the bad guy Grub." I was ignored.
And this is where we meet Harry, an investigator with the police who's nearing retirement and looking to spend his last couple of years near the sea. He spots a vacancy for a lodger, and Minnie almost immediately falls for his charms.
I mean, the right man would go out of his way to find a piece like that. Does it work?
Nothing in here works.
Well, I'm sure all she needs is a little tender, loving care. Soon get her to light up.
Would take skill and a certain amount of patience.
But she'd respond well.
Oh, before I forget, Minnie has severe anxiety and agoraphobia. Whenever she goes anywhere near leaving the house, she seems to enter some kind of bizarre terror world of rocking a mirror of the shot a little quickly back and forth. As a result, she seldom leaves the house, only really going out if Flo goes, basically. Not that the film really cares about this plot point, as halfway through Flo is sort of just dragged out of the house for no purpose really at all, just so Minnie can have scenes in different locations without it flagging up. And by the end of the film, the writers clearly weren't asked anymore at all, and she just strolls about town as you like. I mean, I suppose you could use the fact that she's slowly grown accustomed to the outside world through a mixture of going out with Flo, falling for Harry, and meeting more and more outside people, But let's be honest here, they did it at the beginning as a means to force the audience to spend more time in the central location of the film, because if it wasn't for the agoraphobia, none of this film would have happened. That's because, against Flo's wishes, Minnie agrees to take Harry on as a lodger, which sets Flo off because she's convinced that Harry's going to rumble a small-scale shoplifting gig.
Foreshadowing.
So there's a little bit of tension, not helped by the wanted criminal currently still trapped in Flo's bedroom, but later that evening Flo and Minnie invite Harry to a small dinner. It's microwavable, but they're just about getting by, so yeah. And it's during this meal that Harry mentions in passing that he's more than happy to take a look at the ladies' gas setup, as a couple of the gas heaters in the building are broken and he thinks he can fix them and save the ladies some cash. So he does. Unfortunately, however, in the act of fixing the gas, he inadvertently turns off the heaters in the room Ralph's hiding low in.
Grub. Not Ralph. Grub.
And then turns it back on. All night. And, as a result, throughout the night the pawn shop fills with gas and Ralph ends up dying of carbon monoxide poisoning. Which, well, I'm going to be generous here, this film should have ended here. For starters, Harry goes out to sort the gas in the evening, and then everyone mooches around before heading to bed. They don't discover the gas leak till well into the next day. That means that gas has been pouring into this 2-story building continuously for at minimum about 12 hours on the assumption that he fixed the gas at, say, 9 p.m. and the ladies woke up at 9 a.m. the next day. And that's also assuming, for narrative's sake, that they woke up and immediately went to kick Ralph out, which they didn't. That house should have been an actual death trap by 9 a.m. the next day. There isn't even an argument for it wasn't that much gas, as the hissing noise used clearly indicates that it was in fact quite substantial. But even if we assume that the house wasn't a poison-filled death trap, the first scene we see of the next day is Flo lighting one of the gas heaters in the house. Even if there wasn't enough gas in the house to kill them, and even if they couldn't smell it, which they almost certainly would have been able to, lighting that one gas heater after 12 hours of the house filling with gas should have resulted in nothing more than 3 pairs of shoes, some shreds of clothing, and a 10-mile blast radius where people could only be identifiable by their dental records and their last known movements being preserved in carbon on the walls behind them.
That night, and then again in the morning, we get scenes between Flo and Minnie indicating that they slept with each other's husbands, or at least Flo slept with Minnie's husband.
But no, apparently a major gas leak just results in a bit of panic to open some windows and not one cry for the gas man. Anyway, the pair discover that Ralph's dead from carbon monoxide poisoning, and they react in about the same way I react when I'm told that Subway is out of my favourite salad items. They just kinda shrug, think for a bit about what's the best thing to do, and then the real freak out doesn't happen until Minnie suggests calling the police, which would have solved about 90% of this film's problems. Flo, however, becomes increasingly paranoid that if they call the police, she'll get arrested for shoplifting. So she manages to convince Minnie that if she calls the police about this, both of them will be charged with, at best, involuntary manslaughter and, at worst, outright murder. And I need to take a second here to explain that up to this point, the film's been quite introspective. In fact, we've pretty much spent a good chunk of the runtime with just these 4 characters, and Minnie and Flo easily take the biggest share of the screen time. It's all very much focused on trying to get into their scared, paranoid and troubled minds, and while it's good at setting up the characters, it's these moments that just dragged the most for me. Like, do I need a 5-minute sequence where Flo imagines up a scenario about a man standing outside the pawn store in the rain that she then relays back to Minnie, who accepts it as if it's gospel? No, not really.
There's a man. Is he big? He can't see us, he's too far away. Is he coming this way?
And to make things worse, and we talked about this, it's unclear whether Flo's doing it to fuck with her, or trying to give her joy, or whether she's trying to give herself something to break up the boredom in her life. It's unclear why this scene happens at all.
And mercifully, while these deeper scenes do dry up as the film goes on, it's a bit hard going in the early parts of the film. So, after some back and forth, they settle on the best action they could possibly decide to do. They do the right thing, and jokingly say they're going to eat the corpse to get rid of the evidence before carving him up in a bathtub and storing him in a freezer with the aim of getting rid of chunks of the body by throwing them onto trains that pass over a suspension bridge in the next town over. And this film just went from the lady killers to bad taste in 0.3 seconds. That's no exaggeration either.
He's got good size. Such a waste. Tell him over. A few T-bone, some chunk, nice roast.
What about those bits?
We probably have enough left over for a few pounds of mince.
The first 20 or so minutes of this movie sets itself up as just this charming comedy of errors type affair that borders on tasteful, and then in the space of 10 minutes it becomes a quasi-gory dark comedy with references to man bits, and an uncomfortable bit where Minnie takes more than a passing interest into how much of a waste Ralph's buttocks and thighs are, given how nice they are. And it was at this point that I was convinced Raymond had sent me an unofficial sequel to Necromantic. Mercifully, however, it only got worse in a non-corpse fucking way. So the pair try to put their plan in action, but it's all too risky. They get stopped by the police while trying to dispose of his hands, and when they get back they find that Harry's been in the freezer and cooked what at first they assume is a pork joint, until Ralph's mother tattoo appears and it becomes very apparent that the three of them have now sampled forbidden flesh. So they have to think of another idea, and fast. And genius strikes in the form of a gift from Harry, who decides to gift the spinsters a few chickens to help bring eggs into the house and to act as pets. It's at this point that both Minnie and Flo realise that they can grind the rest of Ralph's body into a paste, mix it in with the chicken feed, and then have the chickens eat the body. They then eat the chickens, effectively getting rid of the evidence once and for all. Et voila! Problem solved. So, that's what they do. As we're treated to a montage in which the three of them eat 1,000 eggs a day and somehow don't turn into 3 sentient lumps of cholesterol. The relationship between Minnie and Harry blossoms, leading to intense growing animosity and paranoia from Flo, an example being she begins to suspect that the eggs may contain evidence of their crime, so she refuses to let any eggs leave the house, and we're treated to cooking and eating montages that are beyond nauseating.
No joke, this goes on for a while, and it is disgusting, just close up on chewing.
It's at this point that we approach the film's endgame as Flo and Minnie head out for Sunday church service.
Actually, they go to a random wedding, which furthers the original point of now Minnie can just go anywhere.
And Harry decides to snoop about a bit and begins to find several blatant and worrying clues that more or less make it painfully obvious that Flo and Minnie have murdered someone. This shifts the dynamic as Harry now grows increasingly conflicted about whether to turn the ladies in and retire with a pretty decent murder case as his last case, or to look the other way on this one and embrace his new life with Minnie by the sea.
After deciding not to file a report about everything he knows, Harry talks to his dead wife about whether this makes him a dirty cop or not.
No favours. That's right. Till now. No, I didn't. I didn't sell myself. Because Minnie didn't ask me to, that's why not. Because she lets me be.
And so the case is given to a much younger officer, and Harry is effectively moved to community support. And this young officer wastes no time. As a chance drop-in at the pawn shop leads to several stark reveals, the officer almost immediately puts in warrants for Flo and Minnie's arrest. The plan being to attend a Christmas Day party at the pawn shop alongside Harry and some other officers, and once the party's over, issue the warrants and take them in. However, when the coroner's report comes in, it reveals that Ralph died of carbon monoxide poisoning, and Harry realises that it was his tinkering that killed him. So he heads over to his boss to try and turn himself in. But at the same time, Flo and Minnie realise that the game's up and decide to try and blackmail the chief of police by reminding him that he used to take backhanders off their now deceased husbands.
Friends who remember you, Jack. Oh, we remember you, Jack. Old friends make the worst of enemies.
So, with the youngish gun ready to pull the trigger to have Flo and Minnie sent down, will Harry manage to step in and take the bullet? Will the chief of police feel intimidated enough to drop the case? And Luke, just how many people here do not give a shit about cholesterol? Jesus Christ, I'm amazed half the people in this film aren't bloody eggs at this point. In a final act twist that's so mind-blowingly bizarre that, quite frankly, Raymond, I'm 99% sure you will not be able to work this thing out.
Okay. So what happened was...
I got lost.
The young officer turns a Christmas party into an engagement party. He's now engaged to the police chief's daughter and wants to impress his future father-in-law with a big arrest of stolen microwaves. Yeah, he looked through the house, found all the evidence Harry did, and wants to pin microwave theft on ladies, like Flo said would fucking happen in the beginning. But that's not the weird part.
They don't understand.
Arsenic and Old Lace ends with Cary Grant finding out that he's actually adopted, so there is no worry of inheriting his aunt's mental illness, so he's free to go on his honeymoon and live the rest of his life. This movie ends with a old people threesome. There, I said it. Minnie, Harry, and Flo fuck and then open a restaurant together. This movie is wow. You can see why I brought in help to do some of the description on this one. I mean, what the hell is going on in Australia? They just... So, yeah, it's a weird one. It's well acted. It's well done. It's just really weird. They eat the chickens, eat the eggs, use the manure to make mushrooms, and eat the mushrooms. That's why the movie's called Mushrooms. And, yeah, they get rid of every piece of evidence eventually. And then the movie ends with them opening a restaurant. I don't know what they're cooking at the restaurant because they used all the food at the Christmas party. I guess people liked it so much they decided to open a restaurant? I don't know. And then the movie ends with an old people threesome. Minnie and Flo were barking at each other most of the movie. That I think Flo banged Minnie's husband. But then at the end, Minnie was like, "No, Flo, you're trying to steal my man." And then at the end, they just randomly decide to share. It makes no sense. I don't understand. Thank you to TYTD Reviews for helping me out with this one. Sorry it took like 7 months to put up, but I'm lazy. You kind of knew that when we started. As for the cast and crew, this part I recorded like 6 months ago. This video is brought to you by Beer Cozies. They keep your beer cozy. There, put an ad in. Now I sound professional. Minnie is played by Lynette Curran, who's 50 years old in this movie. She's a native Australian and still acts occasionally in one-off TV appearances. She had tons of recurring roles on Australian TV through most of the 2000s, but is probably best known for 1,100 episodes of Australia's longest-running soap opera, Bellbird, which ran between the late 60s and early 70s. 405 of those 1,100 episodes also had Julia Blake. Julia Blake was almost a decade older at 59 in this movie. She's originally from London, went to university in Bristol, and moved to Australia in 1962, where she's been acting on stage and screen pretty much non-stop since. Her most famous role, other than Bellbird, is a 2000 drama called Innocence, where at age 65 she decides to leave her husband for her high school sweetheart. The cop in this movie is played by Simon Shivers. He is 56 years old in this movie, right between the ages of our two ladies. He's mostly known for voiceover and commercial work in Australia, and stopped acting for the most part in about 2005, with only a occasional role since then. The director for this movie is Alan Madden. He never really did anything of note, probably including this movie, and never did anything else at all except for a drama called What's the Difference, about a couple struggling with fertility treatments. Camera work and cinematography was done by Lewis Irving, all them disgusting close-ups of people eating. He does tons of Australian stuff. His team has been involved in just about a billion freaking Australian movies, including Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. Thank you for watching a weird one. If you got all 22 minutes into this, God bless you, and have a great day. Thank you for watching. As always, I shall try to do better next time. No bonus clip this time because, well, it's already 22 minutes long. Goodbye! Thanks again, TYTD Reviews. Check out his channel, links in the description.